You are listening to What Do You Do When? A program where massage therapists and acupuncturists send in questions they have about the curious situations that arise in their practice. Most training programs focus on teaching basic techniques and don't address the day-to-day occurrences and dynamics that happen in daily practice. This audio series aims to directly address these questions. So if you have a question, any question at all, please send them to the Golden Flux Guild at gmail.com. That's GoldenFluxGuild at gmail.com. So let's jump right in. Our question today comes from Susan from Berkeley, California, and she writes, what do you do when a client cries during a session? First thing to know is that if a client cries during a session, it's a good thing, meaning that the client feels comfortable enough to let go of some emotional situation they are going through. It means that you, as the therapist, have created a space that is safe and nurturing. It also means that you are moving beyond the role of just being a therapist that relaxes people, but a therapist that also has the power to aid people with inner transformation. Most schools, at one point or another, mention to students that clients can sometimes have emotional releases on the table, but they don't always talk about how to deal with these situations. When you find yourself in a situation like this, it can be very powerful and sometimes scary. A good therapist will invite these heavy situations into their practice and learn how to facilitate the client's emotional releases. I tend to put this into 3 different phases. One is to create a space that is safe and nurturing enough for a client to have that release. The second phase is to hold and maintain that space so that they can fully release whatever it is that is coming up. And the third is to close the space, to resolve the space, and to even bring a little lightheartedness to it. This way that the client knows that what they went through is good for them, it was meant to happen, and it was exactly what they needed. The first part of it, the first part of holding space, you actually already have done. If you didn't do this, the client would never have gotten to that point of actually crying. And that part is to provide a space that is safe and non-judgmental for them, a space that is nurturing and that allows them to let these things that they've been holding on to come up and out. Now, there are 2 basic ways to do this. One is more overt and the other is more covert. And the lines between the 2 are kind of a bit gray. The overt ways that this can be achieved is by, like, when you greet the person and there's a gentle tone in your voice, by the way that the appearance of the treatment room is, by showing your professionalism, by showing the client that you know how to listen to them during the intake and early stages of the treatment, and just simply by your quality of touch. This sets up a space and an area for them where they can trust you and they know that you've been here before. This is nothing new to you. On the other hand, there are covert ways that are a little less obvious to create this space that they can release in. Some things I like to use for this are, the music that you're playing in the background, by certain words you choose, words that can guide your client along their journey, and possibly even the point selection. If you're an acupuncturist or an acupressurist, certain points have functions that go beyond just like mechanical manipulation of the system. They're energetic, they're spirit points, they're points that deal with the emotions and letting go. And you can add these in at the right times when you start to see your client reaching this place of where they look like they're going to have a release, or they look like they want to have a release, an emotional release. And you can kind of guide them with certain words or certain points that facilitate that space and allow them to let go. So all these ideas that I've just mentioned are actually being done before the client releases. You probably have done them in one way or another, and you may or may not be aware of it. But this is what allows a client to release. Most people don't just walk in the room, lay on the table, and just start crying their eyes out. Usually it's a process that happens. It's a process of you relaxing them feeling trusted, and then them moving forward with allowing themselves to release. So establishing this space is really important if this is the type of work you want to do. And even if you find yourself in that spot where someone begins to release, you have to continue to maintain that space, which is where step 2 comes in, or phase 2 of the idea. And that's that here we are, client is crying, you're here, and what are you going to do at this point? The client is already in a vulnerable state. So the one thing you really need to do is to show to your client that you're aware of what they are going through. And the best way to show this to them is through your touch. I don't always go right to words and start talking to them. That actually can bring them out of their subconscious or like the trance hypnotic state that they're in. And it can actually freeze up the release. So, you want to adjust your touch in a way that, facilitates what they're actually going through. So let's say you were going through some deep massage with them and you were working their back or whatever you were doing and manipulating tissue. And then all of a sudden this moment arose. Well, you can't just continue on barreling through their back. You need to lighten up your pressure or even change the technique altogether. Something that I do when a person begins to cry on the table is that I gently rest my hand, one hand, my hands on them, one hand on their upper back by their scapulas and one on their lower back by their sacrum or the Ming Men. And I begin to rock them gently. This is not only soothing for them, but it also has this subconscious reminder of like being rocked to sleep as a baby. And it's very earthy, it's very nurturing. And it would also like just help them shake loose the tension or the stagnation that they have built up and that they're actually letting go. So the gentle holding and the rocking is where to go. And then, let's say it was a quick release and they just cried and then they started talking again and it was like as if it never happened. And then sure, go right back to where you were, go back to slowly moving deeper and deeper within the tissue and continue the massage. At this point, you could even talk to them and, ask them about what they went through, or you can just let it go as if it never happened. Some people are actually, they don't even want to address it just then and there. And just that little process of that little cry or that little bit of release is just huge for them. But if you do decide to start engaging the conversation, the words you choose are really important. Saying too much can actually break the space. The only exception to that is if they really want to talk to you, if they're really engaging conversation, they want to talk about what they're going through, they want to tell you about what they're thinking of, And if that is the case, by all means, carry on the conversation with them. In my experience, most people aren't looking to talk at that time. And if I say anything at all, when they begin to cry, it is usually something along the lines of, like, it's okay, you can let go, or that's like a thing I can say, or you can say something like, it feels really good to let go of all that tension, and then maybe even like make it a little lighthearted. I usually don't use the word cry at this point because for some people, the word cry can have a negative connotation, and that's especially the case for men. It can spark feelings of weakness or helplessness. Instead of using the word cry, though, you can use words like letting go, which implies no judgment and even helps them recognize why they are actually crying. Some people might not even realize that letting go and crying are the same thing. Your word choice is kind of key. And so you're going to pick the words you use gently, and you're going to feel out the client with words and touch and see where they want to go, see if they want to go deeper, if they want to discuss any of these issues, if they want to talk about what they're thinking of or what they're experiencing, or if they just want to let go without any conversation. And, that's like the idea of listening, the power of listening. It's not like when people want to tell you things, it's not so much that they're looking for advice or looking for your opinion. It's more so that they just want to have someone hear them. And that alone is enough to allow them along this process of letting go whatever it is that has been built up inside them, like a bit of a pressure cooker. So you're basically dissipating that pressure. So now that you have that release, you created the space for them to release, and they began to release, and now the release is over. So like, what do you do next? This is the phase 3. And so after all of that is said and done with the client, I usually like to reinforce the idea of that this was a positive experience. Whether that's just saying like something like, wow, that was really great. Or, you have been holding on to that for a while. So it feels so good to let that go. Like these little things is all you need to do. You don't need to give cosmic advice, spiritual advice, counseling, all those things. I mean, you can if you have that skill and that knowledge, and that's what they want. But for the most part, you're just providing space for them to do the work they need to do. You're a facilitator. You're not fixing them. You're just allowing the place that they need to do the work that they need to do, that they've been wanting to do. And then after all that's said and done, you can slowly go back to whatever type of massage you were doing. But it is really important to know that the process of crying will alter many things in their body, physically, chemically, and emotionally. They're in a different state now than they were before. So you don't necessarily have to go so deep. Again, you don't necessarily have to, pick right back up and do every bit of the massage you were going to do. You've done more than enough already, and they have a lot to deal with, and they're going to deal with it. So there's some basic ideas of what to do when someone cries on your table. You're going to create the space for them to feel safe. You're going to maintain that space, not freak out, not try to push it too far, and not try to make it stop. Just let it go. And then the last is to, close it with something lighthearted, or, make sure that they know that what they went through was a positive thing. I've had a number of clients cry on the table, and it's always an amazing thing. Funny thing is when it happens towards the end and they start to cry, and you're looking at that clock, and that clock is staring at you, and you have a client coming in like a half hour, and you need to, navigate that time properly, but you also need to not just cut them short and kick them out. You need to, bring them up, allow them to cry, bring them down, and then, slowly end the session in a way that's nurturing and not dismissive. There you have it. If you have any comments, questions, or things you'd like to add, let us know. Write it in the comments below, and hopefully that will be helpful for you. We thank you for tuning into What Do You Do When? We look forward to hearing any questions you may have. Send them to the GoldenFluxGuild at gmail.com. That's GoldenFluxGuild at gmail.com. If I use your question, I will send you a 10% off coupon that can be used on your next treatment with me or on the next class you take from the Golden Flux Guild. If you felt that this show was beneficial to you, please click like and subscribe to our channel. Also, go to our website at gfguild.wix.com/artofchange. That's gfguild.wix.com/artofchange, and sign up to our mailing list for treatment offers, class info, and other goodies. Until next time, this has been Michael from the Golden Flux Guild.